So next era is the institutionalization and social equity happened in 1858 to 1880s. So continuing from the early development of correspondence learning, distance education in the mid to late 1900s, 19th century rather, began to expand and serve a broader social purpose. So in 1858, the University of London introduced what became known as the external system. So through this system, the university functioned as a global examining body. So basically, students from different parts of the world could study independently or through affiliated institutions, and still they can earn a recognized degree by passing the university's examination. So this innovation significantly widened the access to higher education and is considered one of the earliest formal structures of distance learning, as mentioned by Padolina and colleagues. So a few years later, so in 1873, an important development also occurred in the United States, that is through the efforts of Anna Elliot Kicknor. So she founded a society to encourage studies at home. This is an organization dedicated to providing educational opportunities for women who were often excluded from traditional universities during that time. So through correspondence instruction, the program was able to educate more than 10,000 women, earning Tickner the recognition as one of the pioneers of correspondence education. And this was being mentioned by Simonson and colleagues on their work. So interestingly, the same year in 1873 also marked the milestone in Africa. So the University of the Cape of Good Hope was established in 1873 as an examining institution similar to the University of London's model. So instead of primarily teaching students directly, so it evaluated learners from various colleges and institutions, making higher education accessible to a wider population, as mentioned by Padolina and colleagues in 2007. So by 1883, distance education continued to grow in the United States when Chautauqua College of Liberal Arts was authorized to grant academic degrees through correspondence study. Next will be the university integration and the vocational growth happened in 1890 to 1919. So as this distance education continued to develop toward the end of the 19th century, it gradually moved into both vocational training and formal university education. In 1891, Thomas J. Foster began offering correspondence lessons focused on mine safety. So these lessons were designed to help coal miners improve their knowledge and reduce workplace accidents. Over time, his program expanded. They eventually became the International Correspondence Schools, which is commonly known as ICS. So this program became extremely popular and reached hundreds of thousands of learners, demonstrating how distance education could meet practical workforce needs, so as mentioned by Simonson and colleagues. And shortly after, distance learning also entered the university system. So in 1892, William Rainey Harper established one of the first university level distance education program, that is at the University of Chicago. So Harper strongly supported correspondence study and believed it could be just effective as traditional classroom instruction. So in fact, he predicted that students who prepared lessons through correspondence might sometimes develop a deeper understanding of the subject matter compared to those who only relied on classroom recitations. And this was mentioned both by Petrolina and colleagues and Simonson and colleagues. So by the early 20th century, the use of distance education was being expanding even further. So in 1919, educational authorities in British Columbia, Canada, began offering elementary school lessons through the mail. So this initiative helped children living in isolated areas continue their education despite the lack of nearby schools. So next, we're going to discuss the era of electronic communications from 1920s to 1950s. So of course, as distance education expanded in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, from vocational training to university programs, it became clear that the success of distance learning depended heavily on communication technology. So while early systems relied mainly on printed materials sent through the mail, new technologies soon began to transform how instruction could be delivered. So in the 1920s, radio emerged as one of the first electronic tools used for education. So in the United States alone, there are about 176 educational radio licenses that has been already granted during that time. So allowing schools and universities to broadcast lectures and learning programs to a wider audience by Simonson and colleagues. So instead of waiting for lesson through the mail, now students could listen to instructions or instructors in real time from their homes. By the 1930s, the experimentation expanded to television. So institutions such as the University of Iowa, the Purdue University, and the Kansas State University, they began testing early instructional television programs. So although television was still a new technology during that time, educators already recognized its potential to bring visual learning experiences to distant audiences. So a major milestone came in 1951 when Western Reserve University offered the first continuous series of college credit courses through broadcast television. So this marked an important shift in distance education, moving beyond printed correspondence toward electronic and multimedia instruction, as also mentioned by Simonson and colleagues. So one of the most famous examples followed a few years later with Sunrise Semester, produced by New York University together with CBS or the Columbia Broadcasting System. So they air from 1857 to 1957 rather to 1982. So the program allowed viewers to watch televised lectures early in the morning and even earn college credit, demonstrating how broadcast media could bring higher education directly into people's homes.